Good morning, everyone. You know, all too quickly. Thank you, Alana. Good morning, Alana. Let's make it very personal from up here. Good morning, LaDan. Morning, Chris. Grant. Mr. Hardcorn, good to see you. Glad you made it out this morning. Glad you're still upright. Speaking of being upright, did you guys have a good time last night? No minor fatalities on the tubing hill, I assume. Everybody, how many of you made it to Pine Martin? How many of you rode the quad? I wound up at the top looking a little like Frosty the Snowman and went inside and then just started to melt, right? The ride down was a little slightly more pleasant, not as snowy, and a beautiful view coming back down, but oh my gosh. The beers and the ciders and the kombucha, the food that was available up at Pine Martin, and then the food that was available down below, and the music, the band. I mean, I hope you all had a great time last night. I mean, I want to thank our friends at Mount Bachelor and here in the Central Oregon tourism industry for throwing one heck of a party last night. So thank you so very much. You know, in addition to, or maybe in light of the beer and the cider and the kombucha, and all the good times and like I said, the great music, this happened. I know that's a really cruel way for me to wake you up this morning, but hey, deal with it. No. It truly was a wonderful time, and what a terrific way to showcase the incredible recreational assets that Central Oregon has to offer our visitors that are coming here from around the world. You know, one of those important aspects of welcoming our visitors is providing exemplary customer service, and our sponsors this morning have really put themselves on the tip of the spear in making sure that Oregon's level of quality customer service is unrivaled, that we're going to set the bar for the highest level of customer service and let the rest of the destinations play catch up with us. And it's my great honor right now to introduce to you a real champion for the industry, for the small businesses and all the businesses that make up the travel and tourism industry, the president and CEO of the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, Mr. Jason Brand. Jason, please come on up.
All right, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for giving us the honor of being one of the sponsors at your annual conference. We have a number of team members here this year, and it sounds like they've been well received. They're sitting with me at the front here. They've mentioned that when they meet you, and they say they're with Orla, there's usually smiles and a pleasant exchange. So that makes me feel like we're doing a good job, which I always appreciate. So I just want to give an opportunity here for them to be mentioned here. So we have our Director of Government Affairs, Greg Astley, our Director of Business Development, Marla McCauley, our Director of Communications, Lori Little, and our Chief Operations Officer, John Hamilton. So 2 years ago, when we were in Pendleton for this conference, I had the opportunity to ask you to join me in a journey of imagination, and it was relating to guest service. Imagine if when people entered the borders of our state, they knew their customer service was just going to be that much better than other states, other parts of the country. Imagine if all of our hospitality teams, whether it's outdoor recreation, a lodging property, or a restaurant, had exemplary customer service by making sure everyone had standardized training to know exactly how to handle customer situations. Imagine upon visiting Oregon that families and friends go back to their home state or their home country, and as they think about going back to Oregon, part of that conversation or exchange is about, yeah, the customer service in Oregon was just better. I can't put my finger on why, but I just know it's better there. And yeah, let's go back again. Let's go back again. Just like all of us know, it's, for some reason, everyone in this room knows it's safe to travel in an airplane compared to traveling in a car, right? Not to scare you on your travels back after today, but I mean, where did we get that thought? Where do you put your finger on that? Yeah, we've all had those conversations. It's safer to travel in an airplane. So let's do that together. We're on this journey. We introduced Guest Service Gold 2 years ago. You have a handout on your tables. And I just want to give some kudos to some of the folks here on our handout. These are partners and that are helping us launch this and take it to a new level. So the Oregon Coast Visitors Association, Travel Southern Oregon, Travel Portland, and the Greater Portland Regional Partners, and the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. This program would not have been possible without the great work and leadership of Wendy Popkin, who is on the East Coast with our ProStart teams, our culinary and our management teams that are competing in a national competition in Rhode Island. So I would be remiss if I did not mention our executive director for our foundation, Wendy Popkin. And I also believe Vicki Hastings is here in the audience, who's one of our board members for the Education Foundation. So kudos to both of those ladies and their tremendous leadership, if we could give them a hand. So please, if you'd like more information about Guest Service Gold, there's options for both in-person training and online training. We have the best deal anywhere in the country, $30 a pop for the test. Not even the military has a deal that good, and they're probably going to change that on us in the coming year. So take advantage of that $30 price point, and know that we are the first state in the entire country to have a customer service program like this for the tourism industry. So we literally launched this through Wendy's great leadership and work. So thanks again for the opportunity to sponsor. Wonderful job, Carol Astley, with the conference. So proud of you. Amazing. And thank you, Todd, for your leadership. We appreciate you as well.
Jason is exactly right. There is no other state right now that is doing what we've been able to accomplish here in Oregon under the leadership of the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association and their Education Foundation. We saw the opportunity, obviously, and Orla embraced and brought forward this idea of this Guest Service Gold program, which is part of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. And it was, as you would imagine, very hotel lodging specific. But they were able to work with them, bring it to Oregon, make sure that it covered all aspects of the travel and tourism industry. We made it very Oregon in terms of the videos that are now embedded within the training program that speak to Oregon as a destination and people in Oregon that are then, workers in the industry that are featured in these videos. The success is such that the American Hotel and Lodging Association is now wanting to use the Oregon model to now replicate nationally. So again, a real testament to the leadership that we have at the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association and your Education Foundation. So Jason, thank you to you and to your entire team for your leadership in this regard. I mentioned how last night was such a great opportunity to showcase the recreational assets here in Central Oregon. And we know that outdoor recreation has become has been and continues to be a predominant driver of travel to and within the state of Oregon. There's some research that's been done recently by a gentleman by the name of Adam Davis with DHM Research. What I find interesting about this particular statement that you see up on the screen is this: the nexus between our visitors and our residents is completely unavoidable. The things that we cherish as Oregonians, the things that we value, the reason we love calling Oregon home, this access to the outdoors, the access to this natural beauty, this incredible diversity of landscapes, landforms, waters, and such, for us to then be able to recreate on and enjoy in other ways, are the same things that U.S. residents rate Oregon highest for: natural beauty and access to outdoor recreation. The importance of outdoor recreation to our economy cannot be overlooked. 92% of Oregonians, via the statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, otherwise known as the SCORP, But the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan indicates that 92% of all Oregonians participate in some form of outdoor recreation annually. 23% of our marketable, overnight marketable leisure trips, this is per research that we do with Longwoods International, at least 23% of them indicate that outdoor recreational pursuits were a key component of their trip here to Oregon. The Outdoor Industry Association has measured in the past that the value of the outdoor recreation industry here in Oregon, and this includes retail purchases, recreational services, and the like, totaled $16.4 billion and supports 172,000 jobs. And as you saw yesterday when we were talking about the Oregon Only Slightly Exaggerated campaign, outdoor recreation also has a way of weaving itself into our advertising. What other state has a mountain biking caterpillar? I ask you, you know? This is why the team at Travel Oregon took it upon themselves to convene, and I applaud our destination development team under the leadership of our VP of Destination Development, Kristen Dahl, for saying we need to convene an outdoor recreation initiative. We need to bring people together in this space, service providers, guides, outfitters, the conservation groups, the manufacturers, and others. Bring them together and talk about what is possible in the outdoor recreation industry here in Oregon. The four big themes that you see that popped out from all this work that was undertaken together: stewardship of our natural resources. We have to preserve this place that we have the privilege of promoting. We want to make sure that we're offering world-class experiences, which means we also need to have world-class infrastructure. We need to make sure we're on top of what the economic impact is. We need to have an accurate measurement and reflection of what the total economic impact is. And we need to make sure, and you heard it emphasized in yesterday's lunch session, that diversity, inclusion, and equity, everyone needs to feel welcome and able to access Oregon's amazing outdoors. So we've set up action teams that have gone to work on implementing the Outdoor Recreation Initiative, focused on the diversity of the participants, the Office of Outdoor Recreation, which many of you have already heard about, undertaken an economic impact study, focusing on our marketing and communications and how we can leverage one another's messages in the marketplace, how we can look at designing a network of all the businesses and all the organizations that are involved in this so that our communications and our work together is effective and efficient, that we can look at a system of signature trails, those iconic trails that could become part of the Oregon infrastructure that we're able to market then around the world, and to focus on transportation infrastructure as well, because this is about how we access the trailheads and the boat launches and all the assets that Oregon has to offer. We're already seeing partner investments that are being made. Folks are investing in measuring the impacts of the wildfires. We know how catastrophic last year's forest fire season was, and many of you were here in this room on Sunday night when we had an opportunity to offer some thanks to those firefighters. You know, there's an estimated 8,000 men and women that fought nearly 2,000 fires, covering 660,000 plus acres in Oregon in 2017. But also the work that's going into the Oregon Coast Trail, the Deschutes Trail Collaborative, the Gorge Trail Ambassadors, trail wayfinding programs. So many more kinds of programs are already coming out of the work of this group or supporting the efforts that were already underway, and this group is now able to come in behind and add additional momentum too. Now, many of you have been curious about some of the results of that wildfire impact study that I mentioned just a moment ago, and I'm able to share with you right now what some of those preliminary impacts are. I will also tell you that the final report that is still being developed will be available on May the 23rd. But I can share with you right now some of those preliminary impacts. This is destination spending by region that we know, that we estimate was lost as a result of the wildfires in 2017. Now, I shared with you yesterday that travel and tourism in Oregon is an $11.8 billion industry and supports 112,200 jobs. We added 2,700 new jobs last year alone. But what you see from this slide is that the wildfires resulted in a loss, an estimated loss of over $50 million. And our estimate is that that loss of $50 million is enough economic activity that would have supported the creation of an additional 485 jobs that didn't happen in Oregon in 2017. So getting our arms around catastrophic forest fires is obviously important. When we look at this on a relative basis, we put together this map to just kind of show what does this mean in terms of the loss of your relative annual economic impact, the visitor spending that happens in every region of Oregon throughout the year. And the one thing I do want to call out on this particular slide is even though you see the entire Oregon coast shaded as it is, a region, as Travel Oregon looks at it, those particular impacts are specific to the South Coast. That's where the impacts were felt. There were no discernible impacts from the survey so far that indicate impacts on the Central or the North Coast. But on the South Coast, we did see those. But this gives you an idea of where those relative impacts were in terms of loss based on the percent of your average annual visitor spending throughout the year. So with this as background, with the importance of the outdoor recreation industry, for what it means to our visitors, for what it means to us as residents, and the work that's already underway with the Oregon Outdoor Recreation Initiative, it's now my great privilege to welcome a panel to this stage that are going to engage in a much deeper conversation about what the outdoor recreation industry can and will mean to the state of Oregon. So would you please join me in welcoming to the stage our panelists. First of all, Dan Little, Oregon's first gentleman, a retired U.S. Forest Service employee, and just a great friend of the outdoor recreation industry. Tracy Tophoven with the U.S. Forest Service, the Director for Recreation, Wilderness, and Wild and Scenic Rivers, Lands, and Minerals for Region 6. Chris Havel with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, the Associate Director for Communications. And Mike Wallenfels with Hydro Flask. He's their VP of Global Sales and also the President of the Board of the Oregon Outdoor Alliance. Please join me in welcoming our panel. And in the spirit of quality customer service, if any of you would like a bottle of water, please let me know, and I'll bring it right over to you. All right, let's jump into this. As you know, I gave very de minimis bios as I brought them up here on stage, and these are all interesting and fascinating folks in their own right that I would like to have them share a little bit of their background with you, well, except for Chris Havel. He's not so interesting. Very nice guy, just not so interesting. But, Tracy, let's start with you. Tell us, so you can go last. You can think of something interesting to say, Chris, okay? But just take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in outdoor recreation and your passion for this particular component of the industry. Tracy?
Thanks so much, Todd, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to have been invited to participate with this distinguished panel today and to be invited to be a part of this. I have worked, I can't believe I can say this, but I've worked for the Forest Service for over 25 years now. I can't believe I'm old enough to say that I've done anything for more than 25 years, but there you have it. And I grew up in Wisconsin, just outside of Milwaukee, and my first connection with public lands was through my dad, who was a fireman for 30 years, and he used to take me fishing in northern Wisconsin. And so that formed my experience and my connection to public lands. And so when I got a chance after I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point to work for the Forest Service, which is a multifaceted, multi-use agency that serves the public by stewarding and protecting 193 million acres of national forest land and 155 national forests and 20 grasslands in 43 states, including Puerto Rico. It's a big mission, it's a big lift, but there's a lot of there's a lot of pride there in the service that we're able to provide to the American public, especially to recreation, which is most often people's first touch point with the national forests and public lands.
True story. Thank you, Tracy. Dan, as Oregon's first gentleman, this is something that you brought to the table very early. You're not only your passion for the outdoors, but your passion for that, that inclusiveness, to make sure that all feel welcome. And I know you spent a great career with the Forest Service, and now are serving Oregon very diligently as our first gentleman. Tell us a little bit about you and your passion for this outdoor recreation industry.
Thanks, Todd. I think I'm actually in my third year of training to be first gentleman, and so that makes me a sophomore, right? And so this year's program is all about table etiquette. So as I march through this, I'm learning more and more about what it means to be first gentleman. It's really odd, and it's really a fascinating role. We just got back from a road trip from Eastern Oregon, so we were in Pendleton, LeGrand, Baker City. We ended up in Enterprise, Oregon, Joseph, Wallowa Lake, and it's just it reminds me of just how stunning this country really is, and especially this time of year. And I don't know if you remember, Governor Brown spoke at last year's conference, and kind of the emotion that kind of came up in her voice, and it was a little surprising to me too, just how passionate she is about all this. So I grew up in Colorado, spent a lot of time biking and skiing and doing all sorts of recreational activities, and that I finally decided that was truly my passion, and we didn't know back then just like that this was like a super healthy thing to do. I mean, it just, both like mentally, physically, spiritually, getting out in the outdoors was just so fundamental to, growing up and the activities that we did. And so I went to school, studied natural resources, forestry, got on with the Forest Service pretty quickly. I loved Colorado, but what I really wanted to do was come to Oregon, because Oregon has it all, right? We've got mountains, we've got oceans, we've got beautiful rivers, we've got deserts, you name it. So I really wanted to come to Oregon. Ended up working kind of all over the state in Oregon. So 8 years in John Day, 8 years in Enterprise, 2 years in Grants Pass. Pretty much covered the whole state, working on a variety of national forests and issues. Eventually I got into IT, databases, GIS systems, because it helped me visualize things on a much broader scale. So I had a 30-year career. I've known Tracy for, I don't know, quite a while. And so, being married to a governor is like a really hectic life. And I was eligible to retire, and I was like, okay, I cannot do all of this all at once. And so after about 6 months, I was kind of like cried uncle and said, okay. But Kate and I talked, and we sat down and we said, what do you really want to focus in on? And I said, there's lots of things like, childhood obesity and hunger and opioid addiction and all that kind of stuff. And there's lots of spouses that focus in on those areas. But for me, it was still about the outdoors. Now, what I noticed was there's this real disparity between the people that I was seeing in the outdoors and the outdoor activities and conferences that I would go to and the people that I knew lived in Oregon. I mean, there is a group of people that really aren't able to participate, to feel safe, confident, and welcome in the outdoors. And so that's why I'm focusing in on my effort. It's the Roadmap to the Outdoors initiative, and it is part of, you saw that wheel up there, this is part of the Oregon Outdoor Recreation Initiative. So it's been a really interesting, fascinating initiative, and I'm glad to be part of it. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Mark, a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's great to be here with this group. I've had, I guess I can say, over 30 years, unfortunately, but fortunately for me, within the outdoor industry. I started as a kid climbing and backpacking, and as I made my way out west to California initially, I thought retail is a place that I would start, and I worked in Yosemite Valley at outdoor product-related retail. Then I worked for an outdoor retailer in California for a number of years, and I wound up connecting my passion for the outdoors with what I wanted to do for my day job. So that got me connected with the gear and apparel side of things, and I worked for brands like Sierra Designs, Timbuktu out of San Francisco, but also was a co-founder of a brand called Mountain Hardware. And worked there for a number of years, and then we became partners with Columbia Sportswear here in Oregon. I wound up traveling to Oregon a great deal and developing a passion for the state. That found me a position here in Bend, which was a great destination. The lifestyle of Oregon, the lifestyle of Bend was something I was looking for. And so I work now for VP of Global Sales at Hydro Flask. It connects my connectivity to the outdoors and recreation, passion for the industry, but also connection to the greater needs within the industry. It's not just what we do for a day job, but also promoting outdoors and outdoor recreation. The other part of what I do is advocating for outdoors is part of the Oregon Outdoor Alliance. We're a group of companies and recreation providers and retailers in Oregon that are looking to cultivate and convene and advocate for outdoor industry and outdoor recreation within the state of Oregon. So we've been able to connect with the state and try to basically bring to bear what the brands can do in the economy that we have to support outdoor recreation and land preservation here in the state.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Chris, you and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other for a number of years. I remember we first met and we're talking websites and how the Parks and Rec website and the Travel Oregon website could, you know, even better interact. And I'm going back now a couple of decades almost on that kind of work. So that's obviously been a great pleasure and great joy, and a lot has grown out of that. But tell us a little bit about you and your passion for Oregon and the outdoor recreation
don't have to be sweet now.
industry.
That's okay.
I'm just buying you more time to come up with something interesting.
No,
I'm
I
stalling.
was just still fascinated by everybody else that's sitting up on the stage. So honesty time. How many of you were actually born in Oregon? And it's okay. All right. So the rest of you were born somewhere else. So was I. But, and maybe this is true for you, as it was for me. I was born in Illinois. Don't share that beyond just us. But I don't think I became a person until we moved to Oregon. I was 8 or 9, so really young, lived in Ashland, grew up there, lived in Ashland and LeGrand and in Cascade Locks in the Columbia Gorge before working for the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department for the last 24 years in Salem. But that sense that I don't even remember being a person in Illinois, and it was flat and hot, and occasionally there were tornadoes, and it was like, that's about all they took away from it. But growing up in Ashland and growing up in Oregon, that's when I became aware of things outside of myself, of what the world was really like, and it taught me one important thing. This is something that I got from my dad, is if you want to be an Oregonian, you have to give back. You can't just live here and take and enjoy it and even soak it all in. If you want to be an Oregonian, you have to give back. And that's what's led me to my career now. What made me a person was being able to get lost on a back road, to learn how to avoid snakes. I don't know, I'm not pointing at you for a reason.
Because I'm a snake.
To learn,
Thank you for coming, Chris.
off the rails.
Now we have 3 panelists. That's
right. To learn how to cook over to a fire, to learn how to pitch a tent, to learn how to fish, and just soaking that in, you could stop there, and that's okay. But if Oregon ignites you as a person, the next step is, I want to help other people have experiences. I want to protect our special places so that people have an opportunity to become the fullest, best version of themselves through the Oregon landscape. I believe that to my core, and I found an agency in the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department that believes that too. It's been here for 100 years, coming up on 100 years in 2022. It's Oregon's homegrown recreation advocate. Emerged out of a time in U.S. history when the entire country was really getting turned on to the idea of parks as public spaces. It was shortly after the foundation of the National Park Service that Oregon jumped into the game. So That's a journey. I think it's one that whether you're born here, and if you are, congratulations, or if you are an immigrant and you became a person, whether you grew up here or you became an Oregonian by choice, that's an important step. And I think the obligation on us is to turn that into action and find a way to give back on that. And through the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, the State Park System, and the emerging Office of Outdoor Recreation, we're looking for ways to do that better, and reach every single person in this state with that message.
Thank you, Chris. You know, kind of dovetailing off that, Dan, increasing access is, I know, near and dear to your heart. We had a great panel yesterday at lunch that talked about gender, equity, inclusion, diversity, feeling safe, feeling welcome, even to immigrants from Illinois, wanting them to feel welcome here in Oregon. But specifically for you, making sure that folks feel welcome in the outdoors, and not only welcome, but they have that access. You've led that Roadmap to the Outdoors initiative, and I remember sitting in an early planning meeting where you were hoping you might get 100 people to show up. And we had to cut off registration at 200 because that's how many folks we could safely fit in the room before the fire marshal showed us the door. You're leading that initiative. It's continuing. It was not just a one and done kind of a day together. I know a plan is coming together for that. What's exciting you about this work? Are you pleased with what's transpired so far? What are some of the solutions that you're seeing hold some hope from your perspective?
Great, thanks, Todd. And Chris, do you want to switch places, just so we can separate you two and make sure that things are okay? So Todd's right. We did in February. We did a symposium, and it was the Roadmap to the Outdoors Symposium. We ultimately had capacity for 250. We ended up having actually 260 people show up. The fire marshal did not show up, luckily, so things went fine. We really targeted three groups in this discussion, and it sounds like the noontime discussion yesterday was really along similar lines. So basically three groups, and there's a number of various organizations, federal agencies, and nonprofits that are really working to make a difference in this space. What we wanted to do is have a statewide conversation about, really what's going on, what would make people feel more comfortable in the outdoors. So three groups were invited. One is these different organizations, large and small. We also targeted the funders, because they are really critical to success of this work. We know that federally dollars are going down for areas like the Forest Service, the BLM, and so we wanted to make sure that groups like the Gray Family Foundation, Meyer Memorial Trust, and a variety of industry groups, REI, Columbia, Keene, were at the table to listen to this discussion. And then the third group that we wanted to make sure were there was the voice of diverse communities. And this was particularly important. And these were not necessarily outdoor recreation people. It was kind of a mix, people that got out, recreated outdoors a lot, but also people that may have just recreated casually or weren't that involved in the outdoors. Because what we're trying to do is actually develop a relationship between people that aren't necessarily outdoors people. And so to do that, we had to invite influential leaders and people so that their voices could be heard also. The day was broken up into two sections. We had the first morning was talking about, what is preventing people from getting outdoors, access, what truly are the barriers. And then the afternoon was really talking about what are the solutions. How can we kind of overcome these? And really what we're talking about, and there's a lot of really great work being done. We're talking about a value added, access to all these different organizations. And having kind of a statewide conversation. How can we really promote this? And we're already seeing that. So we had a number of partners, and I'm going to just read through them really quickly. Oregon Parks and Recreation, Chris, they've been, with us every step of the way through this process. Let's see, Oregon State University, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a second. Travel Oregon and the work that Traveling Oregon is doing, both in terms of the Outdoor Recreation Initiative and their support for diversifying the outdoors. Scott Bricker was the moderator throughout the day when we had a series of table conversations, did just a fabulous job. These are hard conversations. I mean, we are talking about some really tough topics around racism and poverty and all those different pieces. So it was a really great discussion. I mentioned Travel Oregon, Governor's Office, Center for Diversity in the Environment, Metro, Viva Northwest. I'll just mention a couple others. So the Mazamas and the work that they're doing. So Mazamas, I think they started in 1894 or something like that. It's like the oldest climbing organization in the United States. You know, they've now expanded and become a real leader, particularly in the outdoors, but part of their focus is also on you know, making the outdoors accessible for everyone. Let's see, we've got the Gray Family Foundation. So the Gray Family Foundation, their focus is really on schools. And when you think about Outdoor School for All, right, every 5th grader and 6th grader will end up spending a week of essentially learning all about the outdoors. It's a residential school experience. So the Gray Family Foundation really spearheaded a lot of that work. And they're also now working on, you know, because we need more than just a week. We need, you know, education before 5th and 6th grade and opportunities in education afterwards. And then I'll just mention Willamette Partnership. Fundamentally, this is about the health of Oregonians, right? It's getting people out. And so Willamette Partnership, they're really focused in on the health of and promoting the outdoors. And so they've been working with a variety of health organizations, public health, you know, coordinators, people like that, to really, you know, tap into that whole health aspect of it. So, I mean, all of this is, you know, trying to get Oregonians more comfortable and healthier, and it's really good business. I mean, when you think about tourism, and we talked about, I'm glad you asked how many people were from Oregon, because you know, if tourists come here and they see Oregonians out participating in the outdoors, leading healthy lifestyles, you know, if I'm a tourist, I'm going to want to come back here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, very true. And you know, that nexus between health and travel or recreation is becoming more and more obvious to more companies. In fact, we recently had a collaborative promotion that we did together with Kaiser, because they saw the opportunity, and of course Kaiser with their Thrive initiative, and they embraced what we were wanting to do for kind of a winter sports promotion, winter recreation promotion here in Oregon, and quickly pushed it out to their subscribers. So it's a great nexus and a great partnership for us to be able to kind of focus in on. You know, given that initiative, Dan, I'm curious, and this is kind of due to Chris and to Tracy. What's some of the research telling us that people are doing in Oregon now? You know, between the National Visitor Use Monitoring Survey or the SCORP, the Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. What do we know that what are those key activities that people are pursuing right now? Tracy?
So yes, what I'd share as a result of our National Visitor Use Monitoring, Oregon's seeing about 9 million visits, recreation visits on national forest lands in Oregon, and the predominant activity is hiking. With a close follow-up of skiing. And I was just visiting with the Pacific Northwest Ski Area Association last week, so they were very interested in that statistic as well.
Interesting. Chris, how about from your perspective?
So trail use has been one of the top 3 recreational pursuits measured by the Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan since it started in the 60s, and it's never changed. I mean, there's a lot of movement in some of the more niche activities, but hiking and sightseeing and some of the casual forms of outdoor recreation that, you know, sometimes we give short shrift to. You know, I think we focus a lot on the things that take a lot of expertise and a lot of gear and a lot of time, But the vast majority of the people who are enjoying the outdoors and really getting something from that experience are doing it through very casual activities. So when I say a hike, I mean everything from that 3-day hike where you're carrying your life on the back to a 1-hour hike in Forest Park, or a section of the Oregon Coast Trail, or on the Deschutes River Trail, where it might only be 20 or 30 minutes sometimes, but that can be a really life-changing thing for some people. So after hiking and sightseeing, you start seeing some of the other more family-oriented activities, picnicking, fishing, on-water sports. Motorized boating used to be up fairly high, and it still is, but paddling and non-motorized boating has really come up in the last 10 years or so.
Great. You know, Mike, I'm curious about some of this conversation from your perspective. You're up here today, obviously wearing a couple of different hats, obviously with your Hydro Flask hat, manufacturing outdoor gear that a lot of us either have, you know, tucked in a fanny pack or a backpack, or we have several of them tucked in our backpacks or our bicycles or wherever as we're out there, but also as a leader in that Oregon Outdoor Alliance. We speak about the importance of outdoor recreation to the Oregon economy. We often think of people out recreating, but there is a manufacturing component to this as well. There are a lot of facets to this economic impact. How do you see this playing out in Oregon right now? What are some of the statistics telling you?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, thanks for bringing that up, because we don't look at, you know, on the gear and apparel side, we don't look at it as just only people having jobs and making money. We look at it as an entire ecosystem. And that ecosystem that creates what we call the recreation economy, which you really referenced some of the early statements of $16 billion in spending here in the state of Oregon, 172,000 jobs. That's not just the tourism side, but it's also the brands like Columbia, Keen, and Hydro Flask that you all know. Every one of those people that work for those brands are passionate outdoors people. They're in it for the lifestyle. They're not just there to get a nickel every day, and they don't just care about, especially brands like Keen that are so heavy into advocacy, and Hydro Flask ourselves. We've spent about $500,000 on promoting and giving money to parks under our Parks for All program. We also we donated $250,000 to the Oregon State University here for OSU Cascades to create a degree program in outdoor products. They also have an incredible program in recreation management. So there's this connectivity between the brands and the ethos that we have and the benefit that everyone gets from outdoor recreation everywhere. So we're a strong advocate. So we wind up representing jobs, we wind up representing industry, but we're also passionate participants, and our employees, we wouldn't have the top level employees that we have here at Hydro Flask unless we had the background that we do. We've moved people here from, well, a lot of people from Portland to Bend for recreational access, but also a number of people from wonderful Salt Lake City. We have a number of people from Utah that have moved here, and I think the outdoor recreation industry benefits the most when they all collaborate together to have unified goals. So we'll spend time advocating for LWCF and for recreation spending, and just as passionate about those as we would the direct business-related topics.
You know, Mike, you raise an interesting point. As a business, you could be located anywhere. Let's be candid. You don't have to be in Oregon, but you've chosen to plant your flag here in Oregon. You've chosen to plant your flag specifically here in Central Oregon. What is it you love about this place that made Central Oregon home to Hydro Flask?
You know, Hydro Flask was born out of need, out of recreation. People wanted cold water when they climbed and hiked and backpacked. It was
take any water sometimes.
It gets really hot out there. But it's, you know, it was an element. It would be a lot easier. For example, I got to go to New York today, to not have to take that little shuttle flight to another nearby city in order to take a longer distance flight. But the trade-off that we get for being in a place and also being so proximal to outdoor recreation, they have them be embedded in our lifestyles. I think a lot of people that decide to do that also say, this is what's right for my family. So it winds up being something that's very much contributing towards the benefit of the company and also the benefit of the local economy. So we're very connected with the local economy, the local advocacy, and I think that our people are able to add to the community, not just for ourselves, but also for the greater good.
All right. Chris, there's been a lot of interest in the Office of Outdoor Recreation, and you mentioned that in your remarks, as I did in some of my opening comments as well. Can you give us a little bit of an update of the status of the Office of Outdoor Recreation?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to set the stage here first. I mentioned that we were coming up on our 100th anniversary in 2022. About 4 years ago, one of our longtime director, Tim Wood, retired, and we went into recruitment mode. And we had the usual list of very good candidates, but the usual suspects. Generally, and say anything I want, right? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, good.
If it's interesting.
Oh, rats. We had the typical pool of white male professionals who had come up through the ranks in outdoor recreation, that had spent their entire lives working out, well qualified, and understood the industry from the inside. Our commission made a different choice. Lisa Sumption, and she wished she were here today, our current director. She's off doing directorial things. She was a bold choice for our commission. She was also, she'd been in Oregon for maybe 15 years. She wasn't a recreation professional, but what she was this forward-thinking, we need to take something like the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department with its long tradition and move it forward and say, we're not just about a state park system founded in 1922, mainly built in the 50s, serving the kinds of needs that were really popular in the 50s. That's the way the state park system looked. It had been struggling to move forward and to find different ways of serving people, mainly due to the initiative of the employees on the ground, not from leadership. Now, our leadership was good, it was solid, it was saying, how do you run a state park system? This is how you run a state park system. Lisa's perspective was, how do we serve Oregonians? Who they are now, what they need now, and what they're going to need in the next 50 years. That's our challenge. Move forward. Stop thinking just about the state park system, although that's the most important thing that we do directly, that we have direct responsibility for, is 108,000 acres or so, 250 or so parks spread across the entire state. Fantastic places, delivering great experiences, but we need to do more. We need to start thinking outside of just our own departmental boundary. So her challenge to us as staff was to look for opportunities to do that. The idea of an Office of Outdoor Recreation serving not just one agency's needs, but serving the broad spectrum of needs across the entire state. It was born out of the Outdoor Recreation Initiative. There's a similar effort in other states, and Lisa saw that as an opportunity to say, this is the next stage of evolution for our department, is to go beyond just the thing that we know how to do and challenge ourselves to be what we already were on paper. We are the leading outdoor recreation advocate for the state. And in the spirit of saying anything I want, we didn't always act like it. We gave grants to communities, millions of dollars in grants spread across several programs. We do the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. You're going to walk away like saying that in your sleep. But it wasn't baked into the very identity of the department, this idea that we really need to start pulling the recreation community together at a high level, at the policy level, at the where are we going as a state? What are our big objectives? How are we going to get there? How do we reach across the boundary from state to county and city and from state to federal? We didn't really have a strategy for doing that. The Office of Outdoor Recreation, which, like I said, was born out of this excellent outdoor recreation initiative and supported by private businesses, by nonprofit advocates, establishes inside our department an effort to work at the policy level, to work at the high level, to bring nonprofit advocates, businesses, state agencies, land managers of all sorts together to agree on strategic priorities for the state of Oregon. And if our evil plan comes together, to take over the entire United States eventually with good, strong, well-founded, localized outdoor recreation goals that every state can pursue. There's a collection of offices of outdoor recreation across the United States. It's an emerging movement to stitch ourselves together into this, force for good. I didn't mean evil at all. So where we're at right now, after that office was established in legislation last year, we've been looking for a person to lead it. We went through a recruitment that didn't turn up exactly the right person. We switched gears and tried recruitment in a much more targeted, headhunty sort of way. And we've got a couple of candidates that we're going to be interviewing in the month of May. That person who's going to be, has to have strong collaboration skills, understand the recreation market, understand the business side, the nonprofit advocacy side, the recreation human need side, bring that all together at a policy level. Form an advisory group that'll be impaneled underneath our commission, impaneled with real power to start making proposals for state and federal legislation, for strategic plan elements across the private and the nonprofit and business sectors, to affect budgets, to really start moving the needle slowly and consistently, bending toward elevating outdoor recreation in every corner of the state. Whether it's in those areas that are already enjoying a success, where their challenges might be resource stewardship, or areas of the state that are traditionally underserved, just in their own communities, not talking about tourism specifically, but what do the residents get out of that experience, and are they living the best, healthiest lives that they possibly could? Are they enjoying themselves the way that Oregon can make it happen for them? All of those elements coming together at a policy level so that we can move things forward. Hopefully we'll have that recruitment finished in May. And then our very next step will be to getting that advisory group together. And our challenge in that advisory group, and maybe a challenge for you in the room, is to think beyond the traditional boundaries of outdoor recreation. I think Dan laid that out very well. Just talking to the people who are really engaged and enjoy outdoor rec isn't enough. You have to bring in the health advocates, education advocates, businesses, nonprofits of all sorts, and weld them together underneath this common purpose of elevating outdoor recreation. So we're on track on the hiring advisory group, I imagine sometime this summer, and then we'll start convening that group to push a broader strategy forward.
All right, thank you. A question for all of you as I think about all this, because outdoor recreation in Oregon is growing. There are now 4 million folks that call Oregon home. And we love our home. We love being outdoors. We love exploring our state in every imaginable way possible. We'll even come up and we'll invent new ways to recreate in the outdoors. Just to be able to get out and experience this place that we have the privilege of living in. At the same time, we're also seeing an increasing number of visitors coming to Oregon from not only across the country, but from around the world. This has led to some capacity constraints in some areas. We have capacity issues, we may have infrastructure issues, we may also have folks that are out recreating on our public lands that may not possess the outdoor ethic that we would hope to have communicated to them in advance of them coming here. Given all that, I'm kind of curious what you're sensing, what you're seeing, if there's some programs in place that are helping us maybe instill some of that outdoor ethic on our folks, or addressing some of these capacity and infrastructure issues that we're seeing. And Tracy, if we can, we'll start with you.
Sure, thanks for that. What I would say is, for the Forest Service, working in partnership and shared stewardship with many, many people. And in Oregon, that, as previously mentioned, seems to be part of the DNA, part of the culture here, and we certainly appreciate that. The Forest Service, we work really closely with lots of different partners and volunteers. I think we have over 290 external partners that we work with, over 3,000 volunteers that are donating, over 300,000 hours of volunteer time, which is just incredible, as well as a lot of our different business partners as well, our outfitter and guides who are providing a valuable service and providing that experience and that touch point with folks who may, may not be comfortable doing that type of activity on themselves or not have the gear. They're also teaching environmental ethics along with that, so they're a strong component of our shared stewardship and partnership.
That's great, thank you. Dan, any thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Governor Brown and I actually toured the Japanese garden with a consulate general from Japan, and we got a tour with a director there. And one of the things they're really trying to do is make every person that goes through there to make them have kind of that unique, special experience. And so, I mean, capacity-wise, they see millions of visitors every year. But they work to make sure that they've got, you know, good education around, you know, how to use the garden, and they've designed it so that, you know, they can handle that kind of influx of people. I mean, to me, you know, after, you know, traveling around Eastern Oregon, there's a lot of areas in Eastern Oregon that are, you know, I would consider them untapped or underutilized. And we certainly have times of the week, times of the month, times of the season. And so part of it is, you know, trying to figure out, you know, because I believe there's actually, although Lisa Sumption, every time I talk to her about bringing more people in from the outdoors, she gets a little twitchy, but, you know, I think there's certainly ways to kind of like spread the wealth and continue to provide opportunities for people to enjoy the outdoors.
Okay, thank you. Mike, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, I think a big component of the sort of outdoor industry, especially where retail touches the consumer, there's some great work that's being done by people like REI or other retailers about educating about Leave No Trace, trying to inform people, you know, making parking passes available and easy to get access to, but also doing that extra step of informing people what to do and what not to do and where to go and maybe where not to go. I travel a lot internationally, work with our partners in Europe, and well, word's getting out about Oregon. So where a little while ago, people that I know in Switzerland or Germany or Japan wouldn't have ever heard about it before, they know about it, and it's becoming quite a destination. So I think we need to continue to make ourselves ready to be able to do that multi-language and inviting atmosphere to Oregon, but also make sure that we're getting the right word and message across for the people that will come here. Parking and impact. Smith Rock, so near to here, it's a perfect example of somewhere that needs a solution. Because local residents will not allow to continue to happen what's happening currently in that area. So we need to make it easier for people to get to these places, to understand where they should go, how they should do it, how they should behave, and try to do that in a multilingual and also reduce barriers sort of a methodology. And I think that, partnering with the people that get in touch with the consumer at retail or the brands that communicate with them, we have an opportunity to have that communication.
Great. Thank you. Chris.
So I think that you're going to hear that theme of partnership. You're hearing it from all of us because now I'm about to say it. So shaping visitor behavior is always a challenge. The market goes where it wants to go. People love Smith Rock for a reason, and to say Fort Rock, it's got half of the words that Smith Rock does. You should go to Fort Rock. It's getting over. No, it's true. So getting over that hump is difficult on our own just by putting out a pretty website or a pretty brochure. But by partnering, especially with business interests that have the same ethics, the same sort of resource stewardship woven into their DNA, Director Sumption really thinks that is the way forward. We're undertaking a stem to gudgeon review of our concessionaire relationships, the way we make it possible and easy for private businesses to do business inside a park and offer experiences that that we can't provide on our own, you know, that we just don't have the expertise to do. So it's already fairly easy for commercial operations to operate inside a state park. Our footprint is generally smaller, though, so we have to work well in concert with our federal partners if they happen to be a neighbor, or even our private landowners who happen to be neighbors as we jump into those kinds of operations. But we really do think that that's the way forward. Offer experiences that draw people to landscapes that are new to them. So we have to be strategic in where we offer concession-based operations. Make it easy for those people to go in. We still have to do our resourcing, you know, our natural resource and cultural resource reviews. But beyond that, the relationship is fairly easy to establish with commercial outfitters and guides. And we really do welcome that. And sometimes that takes those businesses that operate in those areas to come to us to let us know that they exist so that we can find a way to establish that relationship. But that's key. We're not making any new land. Our park acquisition program is relatively small given the rest of the budget. So making better use of the resources that are already there, critically important.
Each of them touched on the word partnership, and I not only find that fascinating, but I find it appropriate. And I think they would all acknowledge from their perspectives, either as manufacturers, fellow state agencies with, between Parks and Travel Oregon, or federal agency partners with the Forest Service, BLM, National Parks, and others. Their partnership is also with us. 400 plus people in here that are representing the 112,000 Oregonians that are employed in the travel and tourism industry. And so, as Dan mentioned at the onset, that we have the Roadmap to the Outdoors Summit here just a couple of months ago. And part of that day was spent in table conversations, being able to identify some of the challenges and opportunities that we have as an industry in this outdoor recreation space. And we don't want to let you get out of here without being able to capture that brain trust while you're here. So I'd like to invite up to the stage right now Scott Bricker, who is Travel Oregon's Director of Destination Development, and his sheep bell, because he will be keeping us on time. But we have a specific exercise that we'd like to take you all through right now, because again, we want to gather this feedback before you get out of here at the end of the conference. Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Todd. So are we on the table exercise slide? Or is that
Go back. Now go forward.
that one? There you go. Thank you. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for having me up here to a great panel conversation. But what we know is that not only is it great to have a brain full of information, but you also have to use your mind in order to be able to retain that and share that. So we have a 5-minute table activity that I'm going to explain right now. So step one, on your table you'll have these little postcards. You maybe have a pen. You're going to answer these 3 questions in 2 to 3 minutes, so a little silent time. What are your region's top outdoor recreation assets and experiences? How does the tourism industry collaborate to enhance these assets or experiences? And what can you do to help? So I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes, then I'm going to ring the sheep bell. And then after that, you're going to share your answers with, you only have a minute and a half each with someone sitting next to you. So even when, and I'll give you a little minute and a half ring too, so you can switch. All right, so let's do that. Take 2 or 3 minutes to think about this, and then I'll ring the bell for the conversation. Okay, so as you start wrapping up your little alone time, why don't you share your answers with someone next to you? You have a minute and a half each. I'm going to have to bring it back. So I'll see if you can have some interesting conversations at your table. Okay,
Do you want me to run out and plant that question while people are talking right now and you're up here?
Sure, I texted it to Kristen. I'm not sure if she'll
perfect.
see it, but
Well, I could just walk over and
yeah,
ask Carrie
okay.
Westland if she'd be willing to ask it.
That'd be great.
Carrie or Alana will ask it if it does, you know.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Thanks. Yeah. So in about
And then
30.
you're going to mention they can turn in the cards when they leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So whenever you want to
All right.
bring it back.
Yeah. I'll say give them. I have maybe another minute and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Make sure you switch now. All right, thanks everyone. Research shows that if you have a chance to not only listen, but to write things down and speak about them, then you could actually remember them better. We're going to need everyone to come back, so the sheep bell's usually pretty good at bringing you all back in. I'm gonna pass it back to Todd, but before I do, I want to mention if you're interested and willing to submit your cards, we'll have some people as you leave just to share your ideas with us, and if there's anything on there you think might be valuable for us, we'd be happy to read them and share them with the folks on the panel too. So thanks for participating in the exercise.
All
Thanks,
right,
Todd.
thank you, Scott, very much. As Scott said, we do want to make sure that we have a chance to capture your ideas. So on your way out of the breakfast, please be sure and hand them to the folks at the door as you're headed out. We've saved a couple of minutes here, rather, for some time for questions from the audience, and I want to open the floor right now. We've got folks with mics that are out there. So if you've got a question, just shoot your hand up. The lights aren't too terribly bright in my eyes, so I think I can see you. Alana, sure, please. Here, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Question for the whole panel, but I'm looking at you, Tracy, because I think you may have the answer for this. Obviously, the fires were devastating for the state of Oregon, and we saw graphically the impacts in Central Oregon. And we know that there have been challenges at the federal level in finding the funding to address the fires, and then also the need that when that funding is diverted, it's leaving a gap. Can you give us your vision on where we're going with this roadmap? And I want to say that when we were in Washington for Destination Capitol Hill, it was a big topic with our delegation, and they were incredibly proactive and responsive.
Thanks, Alana. Tracy.
So thanks for that question. Really timely. Congress just passed as a part of the appropriations bill for this year the fire funding fix, as it's well known as. It won't actually take effect until 2020. So we've got a couple-year glide there. And what that does is provide stable funding for fire resources during our fire season. What is a little unknown to me at this point is how that affects the overall Forest Service budget and resources that are available to recreation programs. So I can't necessarily speak to the impacts of our overall budget, but it will address the issue of diverting funds during fire season, which also happens to be our high use season, away from recreation to support fire. So that is a big win, and we're very appreciative of that.
Yeah, that is a huge win, and it did have great support from the Oregon delegation. So thank you, Tracy, for that update, and Alana for the question. Another question. Okay. Billy.
Hi. So I think we were going there in one of the questions, and that is, how do we teach our values to our visitors and the newcomers to the state? As we know, there's so many of us, so we don't have people in flip-flops on the trails, or so we don't have people going beyond the closed barriers where the trails are, after the fires, being restored. We're hearing people just going beyond that. What can we all do? I know I heard the retail. Through retail, we can teach our values, but what can all of us do to teach or bring that value? Don't go, what do we do? I don't know how else to say it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Billy. Panel?
Wow. Is Linnea here? No, it's Linnea. I know Tribal Oregon has been giving some thought to that. I didn't mean to speak for Tribal Oregon there, but the whole recreate like an Oregonian idea doesn't yet have a concerted, like, here are the materials, here are the messages that everybody needs to echo. But that's part of the start, is to make sure that we're coordinated on messaging. And that's what are we in control of? It's what we say, it's how we promote, it's how we talk, but you need materials that are consistent in order to do that. But the bigger question for me from the state park system perspective is, most of the people that we see jumping fences and going into areas where they shouldn't and abusing, they're Oregonians. I don't mean to be harsh, but people look to us as models. And when they see us doing things, the people who live here doing things, and talk to me later about Cape Kiwanda, and I'll share more specifics about that. I think that's where we need to start. It's not necessarily the travel-oriented messaging, it's what's the environment like when you go into these parks? Do you see the people with an Oregonian license plate sort of unpacking and being respectful of the environment, or do you see them saying, now that I'm relaxing and I'm recreating, I can do whatever I want? And we have that. We've always had that, dating all the way back to the beginning of these park systems. People's principles maybe shift a little bit when they're on leisure time. And without sucking all the fun out of it, because who wants to be a fun sucker, I think going all the way back to outdoor school, building that sense of ethics into the way we play will demonstrate who we are. And that's, I think, 68% of the battle. The other 32%, oh, thank goodness, it's math morning. We can get there with marketing and messaging, but the first biggest step, I think, is just helping Oregonians be true to their own nature.
Okay, first of all, I can't wait to see #FunSucker start showing up on social media. When something bad happens, it sucks the fun out of whatever it was you were doing. I would answer a little bit for Travel Oregon and just say, we as an industry, and working collaboratively with our fellow state and federal agencies, we showed we could do this when you think about what we accomplished during the eclipse. We brought hundreds of thousands of people to Oregon, many of whom had not necessarily recreated, but they knew they wanted to be in that 60-mile wide band of totality, and they were going to get out there and they were going to camp and mark out their spot and do whatever, and we were concerned about firefighters. We had folks who were pre-deploying in Eastern Oregon the equipment necessary to fight fires if spot fires started coming up. We were concerned about transportation. We were concerned about access to water and gasoline and a number of other things as well. So you can start to, I had a feeling that was going to happen if I mentioned the eclipse. If you don't see what's happening behind us here, we are, yeah. But so we've shown that we could do this, but what it was a concerted effort getting out there months in advance and bringing all the messages together. And I think that's the point that Chris was touching on. I know we're doing that around the wildfire season, where the same group of folks that worked on the eclipse are coming together to talk about how do we get in front of wildfire season? How do we help folks recreate smarter so we avoid human-caused fires, at least? I mentioned 2,000 fires roughly that were burning in Oregon last year. My friends, over half of those were human-caused. So what can we do to help prevent the human-caused fires as well? And also, Linnea's defense, I know we have media that are showing up here this morning, and so she's actually out in the lobby with the media right now, in case you're wondering why she wasn't right here in the room. So other comments? Yeah, so I would just tag on to say that I think focusing on educating kids and children, getting that message out earlier. When I think about my own experience as a young person and how that formed my ethics and the things that I paid attention to, I think we've got several opportunities, lots of opportunities here in Oregon to touch not only Oregon children but other children as well in terms of the conservation education programming that's provided both by the Forest Service and the state and other entities. We've got 75 partners. We're engaging more than 135,000 youth through whether it's through Oregon Outdoor School or Every Kid in the Park, which is a national program. I think those are great ways for us to reach and teach, right? And to build that ethic. I also think that we have really strong partners that can help with that messaging as well. So thanks. Yeah, Dan, I know you mentioned the Outdoor School for All, and if we can help infuse this ethic when 5th and 6th graders, should be an opportunity for great impact, right?
Right. So, yeah. So when the kids are saying, "Dad, don't do that," that's a really good thing.
Yeah,
I agree.
Exactly. Another question. All right.
Hi, Michelle Card with the West Columbia Gorge Chamber of Commerce. I feel like this is a perfect opportunity to plug the Trailhead Ambassador Program, which is, yes, applause, it's awesome. This is its initial year, and I think it's so far going really, really excellently well. And I think it would be awesome to see it expanded after this year. But Lizzie Keenan knows much more, so I thought I would pass the mic off, let her say a few words about that.
Nice.
Thank you,
job.
So I am wearing my Trailhead Ambassador shirt today. So yeah, this is a program that I represent Mount Hood Columbia Gorge, RDMO, in case you don't know me. But we've partnered with Friends of the Columbia Gorge, U.S. Forest Service, and state parks to put together a volunteer trailhead program to get volunteers at 10 of our busiest trailheads to start this season every weekend from 2 weekends ago through the middle of September, to basically give this, like as Billy was mentioning, how do we get this information out to visitors? We're getting them right before they get onto their trails, so giving them safety advice, giving them, most people, I was up at Trillium Lake a couple weekends ago, they had no idea there was snow out there, people were in flip-flops, nobody had ever seen the trail before, they didn't know it was 2 miles to get to the lake. Yeah, there's no bathrooms, no trash, nobody had parking permits, so it's just tons of information that they don't have beforehand. So at the very least, we're basically capitalizing on Oregonians loving the state of Oregon and wanting to give back to their own trails and using their manpower out on our own trails. So I think that's a great, hopefully a huge opportunity for the state, and we can expand it further. But we're just on weekend 2.
Thank you, Lizzie. Yeah. That's a great point for us to kind of wrap this session up on. Oregonians loving their state and eager to share it in a responsible way with our fellow Oregonians and with our visitors from around the world. So I apologize. We're right on time right now, so I'm not going to be able to take any additional questions, but you're standing there. You're still holding the mic to your mouth. You are determined to ask this question. I am
you don't put a microphone in front of a politician.
Stop you. Go ahead.
My name's Scott Bridge, mayor of the city of Scappoose, and it's a horrible thing that those fires happened out there in the gorge. But instead of going east, you go northwest up into Columbia County. We have trails that are unoccupied, that are waiting for people, and you can wear your flip-flops. They're family friendly, or you can choose to do water trails and kayaks. So we have beautiful country out there. We've just been silent all the time. So I thought I'd jump up on the hill and say, hey, we're over here. If it's too crowded and you don't like the crowds, come our way. We'll take care of you.
There's always enough time for a little shameless self-promotion. Well done. Please join me in thanking the members of our panel for their time and their expertise that they shared with us today. Scott, for leading us in our table exercise. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate all of your support. Kendra, come on up. I know you're doing housekeeping for us, so I'll bring you up right now. Come on up. All right.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Just a few things to note about what's coming up next for you. So we are going into another exhibitor break, and we are doing appointments again at the exhibitor break. So if you haven't had a chance to look into the app and see if you want to meet with anybody, come on down to the exhibit hall. The appointments pavilion's down there, and we'll have somebody there that can help get you in. It's also going to be the last time you can bid on ODMO auction baskets and prizes and things, so make sure you get your name on all those bid sheets if you're looking to. And also, just a couple more things. You have a couple more opportunities to also buy raffle tickets for AUTA, if you haven't done that already. After the break, we're at 10:30, we're going into our workshops, and so speed dating will be downstairs in the exhibit hall. Everything else is in this building on this floor. And then we'll see you here at lunch for our closing keynote. We're very excited. Todd Maffin, he's coming all the way from Canada to talk about viral marketing, so we'll see you back.
This is my fire.